Okay, we are going to get started. It is the first group, so come on down. This is an all-civilian group, and I will let them tell you about their project. I'll give you a quick preview as they get up in here. We call them the Beauty Influencer Group. All right, so your mic is on. Is this on?
Yes. Okay. Hello all, good afternoon. Before we begin, I would like to start by introducing both myself as well as my fellow researchers. My name is Sydney Serdashny. This is Chloe O'Rourke and Nicole Wright. So embarking on our research, we were really interested in understanding kind of the dynamic between influencers as outsourced spokespeople for an organization, and two, if there's any impact to the organization when an influencer is engaged in a transgression on social media. So our study follows Benoit's 1995 image restoration apology strategies. So he suggests 5 of them, but for the purposes of our research, we focus on 2. So denial, and in this research, you'll hear it referred to as excuse, and a corrective action, which you will hear it referred to as expressive. So there are also several studies that inspired the creation of ours. The first being Trying to Claudio and Giannis, 2020, where they created a fictitious hotel in the midst of a transgression. They found Twitter to be the most responsive for participants, and they also found that when the fictitious hotel employed a corrective action apology strategy, that people were still likely to go and visit that fictitious hotel. In Woods 2020, they analyzed a beauty influencer's controversial tweet, as well as the responses to her affiliated beauty organizations. They found that as attitude for the influencer depleted, perceptions of the organization actually increased. Additionally, in Singh et al. 2020, they analyzed participants' responses to an organization's response to a crisis aided by an influencer, and they found that when the organization presented a clarity apology strategy, that people actually perceived the organization to have a better image overall. And lastly, Lawson 2020, which analyzed 2 online crises, and it found that these organizations didn't matter what apology strategy that they used. Audience just found that their apologies seemed like they were only focused on crisis control and they showed no true atonement. So this study is again driven by image restoration strategies, and they are applied to an influencer using these apology strategies, and we see if there is any impact overall to the organization based on kind of 2 key areas: purchase intent and purchase decision. So with that, our first research question is, does apology strategy used by an influencer in a transgression have any impact on purchase intent? And 2, how, if at all, does apology strategy impact purchase decision?
So to answer these research questions, we conducted an online experiment comparing apology tactics. And what we were really looking to determine is if brand association with a controversial influencer can have a negative impact on an organization's bottom line. Image restoration theory presents that 2 factors are necessary for a situation to be considered a crisis. First, that the accused is being held responsible for the act, and second, that the act is considered offensive. So with these 2 factors in mind, we centered our study on Nikita Dragun. She's a beauty influencer that found herself at the center of a blackfishing controversy in late 2020. 2 images of Nikita with vastly different skin tones were making the rounds online. Many users were calling for her removal from upcoming projects. This even made it into more traditional media outlets, and many were accusing her of cultural appropriation. This is really where our experiment started. So all of our participants were primed with these 2 images of Nikita with the 2 very different skin tones, as well as her response during the crisis, which was really to make light of it. And they were shown a tweet from her official account stating, "What race is Nikita gonna be today?" So take with that one what you will. From here, all of our participants were randomly assigned to one of 3 experimental cells. The first was a control. They saw no apology tactics, skipped all the way to our final step. The second was our excuse cell. They saw her real response, which was to double down on her actions, claim her heritage as a minority, and she even went as far as to say that she was completely over the accusations being leveled against her. So as public relations practitioners, we can pretty confidently say that's not what we would recommend. And this is what led us to our third cell, which was our expressive. So these participants were shown a tweet that our team crafted using a lot of those public relations best practices, showing an apology, and really stating that she's going to be doing better in the future. From here, regardless of experimental cell, all of our participants were shown a tweet from Morphe Cosmetics. They were announcing their upcoming launch in collaboration with Nikita Dragun and really solidifying her as a spokesperson for the brand. So this really set the scene for us to be able to measure purchase intent as well as purchase decision. In order to do that, we ran an ANOVA, and what we found is that there was no statistical significance between purchase intent toward Morphe Cosmetics and Apology Tactic, and no statistical significance between Apology Tactic and purchase decision toward products that Nikita herself endorses. But what does this really mean for public relations practitioners when they are using these outsourced spokespeople? It means that this strategy may be less of a risk than we originally hypothesized if when this influencer is responding poorly, it doesn't necessarily have an impact on whether people are going to buy your products.
All right, so our work moves image restoration theory forward by applying a lens not often used in previous research. Thank you so much. So when we want to look back on this previous research, we'll go back to our lit review. In the Sing It All study of 2020, they did look at the way, influencers, IRT, image restoration theory, all play out on social media. However, they looked at the way an influencer comes in as an aid to an organization after a crisis has occurred, and we instead are looking at how this all plays out when an influencer is already tied in as an outsourced spokesperson with, and that they have to deal with the aftermath of the transgressions. We look also at Trifalandu and Giannis, which has some very similar themes as our work, but they instead chose to utilize a fictional hotel in their study, and we chose an actual situation that played out on Twitter with Nikita Dragun. And we also, used a quantitative approach instead of a qualitative approach, which has been taken in a lot of influencer-related research. We look at Lawson. It was a multi-platform discourse. We have another study, Woods, from 2021, which was a content analysis, and this can be beneficial, but we really feel the experimental nature of our design was really beneficial for moving public relations research forward. Of course, we had some limitations. We did our study through SONA here at San Diego State, so a lot of our participants fell into the Generation Z group. No one was over 39. We had a lot 18 to 39. Under 30 participants. So we don't really know necessarily how, Gen X or, maybe baby boomers would feel about this. This is very focused on this younger group. Also, we had 80% of our respondents were women. So we know that if we want to make the study more generalizable, we're going to need to bring in some, individuals who identify outside of female into our study. But, there are a lot of consumers who, buy makeup who are women, so it's still very valid and interesting to look at. And we also realize in terms of our design, it may have been beneficial to employ some kind of pre-questionnaire where we can really establish people's baseline knowledge of Nikita Dragun as an influencer, because that turned to be rather interesting, kind of trying to figure that out, how to really manage that percent change. And also, exposure to our stimuli. We feel we could have required our participants to stay with our stimuli material a little longer. We only required 10 seconds. Average participants spent about 15 seconds on each page, so we feel we should amp that up to 20. Future, research, we want this to become generalizable, and by doing so, we definitely think, pre-questionnaire, maybe kind of including some sort of survey to create a baseline where we can say, hey, how did our participants respond to previous crisis or other influencer, mishaps in the past, so we could kind of get more of an understanding of their general feelings towards influencer crisis. But we're super excited for our upcoming amendments to this project, and I'm going to let Cindy take over and finish that.
Yeah, to conclude, we would just like to say that there are additional aspects to this study that are still in the data collection process. So we're really interested to see how that really collected data only enhances the knowledge that we've already accumulated through this analysis. We're also pushing towards publications so that those in PR, crisis communication, and communication in general across a variety of industries can see that using influencers, there's actually some benefits to help reach those latent audiences. We thank you again for your time today, for coming to listen to all of our presentations. We'll now open it up for questions.